The Battle of Yarmouk, 636 CE, was a decisive conflict between the Byzantine Empire and the Rashidun Caliphate. Fought near the Yarmouk River in present-day Jordan, it marked the turning point in the Muslim conquest of the Levant. The outnumbered Muslim forces, led by Khalid ibn al-Walid, achieved a stunning victory over the Byzantines. This battle ended Byzantine rule in Syria and paved the way for Muslim expansion across the region, significantly altering the balance of power.
After the Battle of Yarmouk, which took place on the 27th of Jumada I, 13 August 30th, 643 AD, the Muslims were able to continue their victorious campaign, advancing from one triumph to another, eventually gaining control over vast parts of the Levant. These included Basra, Baalbek, Homs, Damascus, al-Balkh, Jordan, and parts of Palestine. Faced with the loss of valuable parts of his empire to Muslim conquests, Emperor Heraclius of Byzantines had no choice but to prepare for a decisive battle that would restore his prestige and reclaim what had been taken from his empire. He began to gather vast numbers of his soldiers and anyone capable of wielding a weapon from among the Byzantines, advancing from Antioch where he resided towards southern Syria. Following the conquest of Homs in the year 635 AD, the Muslim forces were stationed in various locations: Abu Ubaidah in Homs, Khalid ibn al-Walid with his forces in Damascus, Shurabil in Jordan, and Ibn al-Az in Palestine. When news of Byzantine's preparations reached Abu Ubaidah, he gathered the commanders to consult them and seek their opinions. The discussion concluded with the decision for the Muslim forces to withdraw from the cities they had conquered to a location closer to the Hijaz, gather all the armies into one, and for Abu Ubaidah to send a request for reinforcements to the Caliph Ibn al-Khattab in Medina. Before moving the Muslim forces, Abu Ubaidah summoned Ibn Maslama, his tax collector, and said to him, "Return to the people we made peace with, from among the inhabitants of the city, whatever we had taken from them. For it is not right for us to take anything from them if we are not protecting them. Tell them we remain committed to the terms of the treaty between us, and we will not withdraw from it unless you do. We are returning your wealth, because we do not want to take your money without protecting your lands." The next morning, Abu Ubaidah ordered his forces to depart from Homs toward Damascus, and Ibn Maslama returned the taxes to the people of Homs, explaining what Abu Ubaidah had said. The response of the people was, "May God return you to us. May God curse the Romans who ruled over us, for if they were in your place, they would not have returned anything to us. They would have seized whatever they could. We prefer your rule and your return over the oppression and tyranny we were under before." After the Muslims evacuated the city of Homs, the Byzantines' forces entered it, and then moved south through the Bekaa Valley to Baalbek, avoiding Damascus, where the Muslims were stationed, and instead heading further south. The Muslims, observing the Byzantines' movements, concluded that the enemy was attempting a flanking maneuver aimed at encircling them and cutting off their retreat. Abu Ubaidah again convened his commanders, and they agreed to leave Damascus and move to Al-Jabiyah, where they would join forces with Amr ibn al-Az's army stationed in Palestine while awaiting reinforcements from Caliph Ibn al-Khattab. A portion of the Byzantines' army advanced to the Jordan River toward the Muslims at Al-Jabiyah. The Muslims feared being trapped between the Byzantines' forces, already in Jordan and Palestine, and the reinforcements arriving from Antioch, which could cut off their supply lines and sever their connection to northern Jordan and al-Balkh, the region linking them to the Hejaz. Thus, the Muslim armies decided to withdraw from Al-Jabiyah to Yarmouk. Preparation for the battle. Khalid ibn al-Walid took command of the Muslim army after a gracious concession from Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, who held overall authority over the Muslim forces in Syria. Khalid was known for his extraordinary courage, blessing, and success in battle. Khalid began organizing the army, which numbered 46,000 fighters. He divided the army into Quraidas, battalions, each comprising between 600 and 1,000 men. Each Quraidas was further divided into units of 10, led by Arif, commander of 10 men, while the Emir al-Ashar, commander of the hundreds, led 10 Ares. The leader of each Quradis commanded 1,000 men. Historians agree that Khalid ibn al-Walid was the first to introduce this military organization, which was seen as a groundbreaking development in Islamic warfare. He grouped each Quradis by tribe or common ancestry and appointed commanders known for their bravery. He then combined the battalions into 3 main groups: the center, the right flank, and the left flank. Leading the center battalions was Abu Ubaidah ibn al-Jarrah, accompanied by the Muhajirin and Ansar, early Muslim immigrants and supporters. On the right flank was Amr ibn al-As, assisted by Shurabil, and on the left flank was Yazid ibn Abi Sufyan. The infantry formed 36 battalions, along with 10 cavalry battalions, 4 of which were stationed behind the center, 2 at the vanguard, and the remaining 4 distributed along the flanks. The Byzantines' army consisted of around 200,000 fighters under the leadership of Mahan. He divided his army into different sections: the vanguard, consisting of Christianized Arab tribes such as Lakam, Judam, and Ghassan, led by Jabala ibn al-Ayyam. The right wing was commanded by Kreen, the left by Ibn Kanadir, and the center by Durjan. Mahan marched toward the Muslims on a foggy day, positioning his soldiers in 20 rows. Descriptions of this formidable army likened it to a flood, or the dark night, with one chronicler saying, "They advanced towards the Muslims like the night and the flood." Some monks by night, warriors by day. One of the Byzantines' commanders summoned a Christian Arab and asked him to infiltrate the Muslim camp, observe their behavior, and report back. So the man entered the Muslim camp without being noticed, as he was an Arab by tongue and appearance. He spent a night and most of the next day among the Muslims before returning to his Byzantine's commander. He reported, "I came from a people who spend the night in prayer and fast during the day. They enjoin what is right and forbid what is wrong. They are monks by night and warriors by day. If their leader were to steal, they would cut off his hand. If he committed adultery, they would stone him to death. They prioritize truth and follow it, shunning personal desires." When the Byzantines' commander heard this, he remarked, "If these people are as you describe, then it is better to be buried beneath the earth than to fight them." On the morning of Monday, 5th Rajab, 15 AH, August 12, 636 CE, the Muslims awoke, filled with enthusiasm for the upcoming battle against the Byzantines. Their hearts were at ease, trusting in God's victory. They marched in the formation designed by their general, carrying their banner. Abu Ubaidah moved among the soldiers, urging them to remain patient and steadfast. He told them, "O servants of God, support God, and He will support you and make your feet firm. O Muslims, be patient, for patience is salvation from disbelief and brings the pleasure of the Lord. Do not leave your positions, do not advance, and do not initiate the fight. Ready your spears, take cover with your shields, and remain silent, except for the remembrance of God until I give the command." Mu'adh ibn Jabal also addressed the people, saying, "O reciters of the Quran, guardians of the book, supporters of guidance, and followers of truth, God's mercy in His paradise will not be attained through mere wishes. God will only grant forgiveness and mercy to the truthful believers in His promises. You, God willing, are victorious, so obey God and His messenger. Do not quarrel among yourselves, or you will fail and your strength will depart. Be patient, for God is with the patient. Fear that your Lord may see you fleeing from your enemy, while you are in His grasp and mercy, for none of you can find refuge without Him." The decisive encounter and its outcome, the massive Byzantines' ranks advanced toward the Muslims, with a noise like thunder. 30,000 Byzantine soldiers were chained together in groups of 10 to prevent retreat. They raised their crosses, and their bishops, monks, and patriarchs accompanied them. Seeing the overwhelming Byzantines advance like a flood, Khalid ibn al-Walid devised a plan. His strategy was for the Muslims to hold their ground against this intense assault until the Roman lines broke and became disorganized, at which point he would launch a counterattack. Khalid remained calm and resolute, even as he witnessed the advancing Roman forces like a massive, raging torrent. He overheard a Muslim soldier, whose heart had faltered upon seeing the Byzantines' army, say how numerous the Byzantines are, and how few we are. Khalid, disturbed by this remark, rebuked him, saying, "How few the Byzantines are! and how many the Muslims are. Armies are made numerous by victory and few by defeat, not by the number of men. Do you think you can frighten me with the Byzantines?" The two forces clashed, and the Byzantines pressed hard on the right wing of the Muslims, causing it to break, and they did the same with the left wing. However, the center remained firm with its soldiers holding their ground. Abu Ubaidah was positioned behind them, supporting them and boosting their morale. The Muslims fought valiantly, and some stood as steadfast as mountains, showing extraordinary examples of bravery in answering the call. Even the women fought courageously.
The Muslims endured this overwhelming assault with unwavering resolve. Whenever a line wavered, it quickly reformed and returned to the battle. When the moment awaited by the brilliant commander Khalid bin al-Walid arrived, he cried out to the troops, "O people of Islam, the enemy has no more strength or stamina left than what you've already seen. Now, intensify your efforts. By the one in whose hand my soul lies, God will give you victory over them this hour." Khalid then advanced with his cavalry, saving them for this decisive moment. They charged at the Byzantines, who were exhausted and whose ranks had become disordered. The Byzantines' cavalry had penetrated the rear of the Muslim camp, but Khalid's counterattack. Surprised by the counteroffensive, the Byzantines' cavalry didn't engage in further combat and fled across the desert, abandoning the battlefield. When the Muslims saw the cavalry fleeing, they allowed them to leave the battlefield unharmed. The Byzantines' forces collapsed completely. They trampled over each other as they retreated. Eventually, they reached a cliff edge, and in their panic, they began falling into the chasm below, unable to see where they were stepping. As night fell and fog filled the air, tens of thousands are said to have fallen into this chasm, with some reports claiming they numbered 80,000. After the battle, the Muslims killed around 50,000 more Byzantines who had fled, excluding those who fell into the chasm. The next morning, the Muslims looked down into the valley and saw no sign of the Byzantines. Suspecting a trap, they sent out scouts to investigate, only to be informed by local herders that the Byzantines had fallen into the chasm during their retreat, and those who survived had left the area. The Battle of Yarmouk was one of the greatest Islamic victories, with far-reaching effects on the Islamic conquests. The Byzantine army, the strongest military force in the world at the time, suffered a devastating defeat. Emperor Heraclius, realizing the magnitude of the disaster that had befallen, left the region for good, saying, "Farewell, Syria, a farewell with no return. What a great land you are for the enemy, but not for a friend. No Byzantines will enter again, except in fear." This tremendous victory allowed the Muslims to consolidate their hold over the Levant, complete the conquest of all its cities, and continue their expansion, eventually annexing Egypt and North Africa.
Enjoyed the content? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us grow.